This story is titled, Sister Held Me Responsible for Her Divorce. My family sided with her, but 3 years later, karma struck. Hey everyone, I just wanted to share something real with you. The channel's been slowing down a bit recently, and honestly, I put a lot of time and effort into finding these stories to keep bringing you the best content. If you enjoy what I do, it would mean the world if you hit that subscribe button. Your support really makes all the difference and keeps this journey going strong. Thanks so much for being here with me. Now let's start the video. OP starts by saying, growing up, it was like my sister Hannah could do no wrong. My parents, especially my mom, doted on her endlessly. I was the younger sibling, the afterthought. If Hannah wanted something, she got it, no questions asked. If I wanted something, I was told, you need to earn it. It wasn't always big things either. Small stuff like getting the last slice of pizza or having the TV remote for the night. With her, it was automatic. With me, it was conditional. By the time I was 10, I stopped bothering to ask for much. If I didn't, there was no chance for rejection. Instead, I'd quietly make do with what I had, hoping to avoid conflict. Hannah, she thrived on being the center of attention. She'd boss me around, and when I protested, my parents would tell me to stop being difficult. I can't count the number of times I heard, Hannah is older. She knows better, even when she clearly didn't. The worst part was that I didn't even hate her for it back then. I wanted to like my sister. I really did. I wanted to believe we were on the same team, but she rarely treated me like we were. If she had the chance to throw me under the bus to keep herself in good standing with our parents, she wouldn't hesitate. That pattern didn't change as we got older. By the time Hannah turned 25, she got engaged to Jacob, a guy I honestly thought was way too good for her. He was the complete opposite of her in every way, grounded, mature, and respectful. I hoped that marriage might help her mature, help her grow out of the self-centered bubble she lived in. Maybe Jacob could be the stability she needed. For a while, it even seemed like that might happen. Hannah looked genuinely happy, and Jacob seemed devoted to her. But old habits die hard, and within a year of their wedding, the cracks started to show. It wasn't like she was hiding her behavior either. On one visit to my parents' house, I overheard her talking to a friend on the phone about how boring Jacob had become. She said he was too serious and didn't know how to have fun anymore. To me, it sounded like he was just trying to be a responsible adult. Still, my parents dismissed any concerns. Whenever Jacob brought up her late nights or her excessive spending, they'd side with her. She's still young, they'd say. Jacob needs to stop trying to control her. It was like nothing had changed from when we were kids. Hannah could act however she wanted, and anyone who tried to hold her accountable was the problem. I wasn't close enough to Jacob to talk to him about it, but I started noticing things that made me uneasy. For one, Hannah was glued to her phone in a way that wasn't normal. If it buzzed, she'd snatch it up and immediately walk out of the room. If Jacob asked who it was, she'd brush it off with a vague answer, or tell him not to worry about it. It was like she was daring him to ask more questions, just so she could accuse him of being controlling. The turning point for me came when I saw a message on her phone. I wasn't snooping. She'd left it on the kitchen counter while she grabbed something from the fridge. The screen lit up, and there it was. A message from someone named L about meeting at a hotel. My stomach dropped. I didn't know who L was, but I doubted it was just a friend. The way the message was worded, it wasn't exactly subtle. I wanted to believe there was some innocent explanation, but I knew better. I debated with myself for weeks about what to do. Should I tell Jacob? Should I confront Hannah? Or should I just stay out of it? Wasn't naive. I knew what the fallout would be if I said anything. My parents would immediately side with her, and Hannah would probably find a way to make me the villain. I tried convincing myself that maybe it wasn't my place. Maybe Jacob would figure it out on his own. But deep down, I knew I was just scared. Things escalated a few months later when Hannah introduced us to Noah, a friend from her new job. From the moment I met him, I knew there was more to the story. He was charming, sure, but the way he and Hannah interacted wasn't the way friends behaved. They had inside jokes, whispered conversations, and way too much physical closeness. It wasn't even subtle. Jacob seemed uneasy too, but he didn't say anything. I figured he was trying to trust his wife. Meanwhile, my parents adored Noah. He was polite, well-dressed, and always knew the right thing to say. They didn't notice, or maybe didn't want to notice, how he and Hannah behaved around each other. I told myself that if Jacob wasn't saying anything, I shouldn't either. It wasn't my business. But the guilt of staying quiet started eating at me. The final straw came when Hannah invited Noah to a family barbecue. The barbecue was supposed to be a simple family get-together. My parents invited everyone to their backyard for burgers, drinks, and a relaxing evening. I wasn't exactly thrilled to go. I rarely was when family events were involved, but Rachel convinced me. She thought it might help ease the tension I always felt around my parents and Hannah. I agreed, figuring it wouldn't hurt to show up for a few hours and leave early. When we arrived, everything seemed fine at first. Jacob was helping Dad at the grill, and Hannah was mingling with some of the neighbors. Rachel greeted everyone politely, doing her best to fit in despite how little my family had made her feel welcome in the past. She didn't say it outright, but I knew she noticed how different the atmosphere was when it came to Hannah. Everyone gravitated toward my sister, laughing at her jokes and hanging on her every word. It was like she was the sun, and the rest of us were planets in her orbit. Then Noah showed up. I hadn't known he'd be there, and from the look on Jacob's face, neither had he. Noah strolled in like he owned the place, carrying a six-pack and greeting everyone like they were old friends. Hannah's face lit up when she saw him, and she practically ran over to give him a hug. Jacob looked down at the ground, and I felt a pang of secondhand embarrassment for him. It didn't take long for Noah to start stirring the pot. He was one of those people who couldn't resist making everything about himself. Within minutes, he was cracking jokes at everyone's expense, including mine. "Hey, how's the little brother doing? Still tagging along behind Big Sis?" he asked, smirking. I forced a laugh and ignored him, but I could feel Rachel stiffen next to me. The tipping point came when Noah turned his attention to Rachel. He asked her where she was from, what she did for a living, and then, without missing a beat, made a comment about how I'd really lucked out with her. It wasn't a compliment. It was the kind of backhanded remark that made it clear he thought I didn't deserve her. "Man, you must have some serious charm to land someone like her. I mean, she's way out of your league," he said, laughing. Rachel smiled politely and tried to brush it off, but I could see the discomfort in her eyes. I wanted to tell Noah to shut up, but I knew it would only escalate things. So I stayed quiet, hoping he'd get bored and move on. He didn't. As the evening went on, Noah kept finding ways to needle me. He'd make little digs about my job, my car, even my choice of shoes. I could handle it. I was used to people like him. But then he crossed a line. Rachel was standing by the table talking to my mom when Noah accidentally spilled his drink on her. The soda soaked the front of her dress, and she gasped, looking down in shock. "Oh no, looks like someone's ready for a wet t-shirt contest," Noah said, laughing like he'd just told the funniest joke in the world. Rachel's face turned bright red, and she looked like she was about to cry. That was it for me. I walked over to Noah and told him, loud enough for everyone to hear, to apologize to Rachel. He looked at me like I'd grown a second head. "Relax, man. It was just a joke," he said, shrugging. "Apologize," I repeated, my voice steady but firm. Hannah jumped in before Noah could respond. "Oh, come on, it wasn't that serious. You're being so oversensitive. It's not like he meant to spill it." I turned to her, my anger boiling over. "Are you serious right now? He humiliated Rachel in front of everyone, and you're defending him?" Hannah rolled her eyes. "You're ruining the mood. Can you just let it go for once? It's a party." My parents, predictably, sided with her. "He didn't mean any harm," my mom said. "You're blowing this way out of proportion. Why don't you just apologize and let's move on?" I couldn't believe what I was hearing. It was like I was a kid again, being told to shut up and go along with whatever Hannah wanted. Something inside me snapped. Years of frustration and resentment came pouring out, and I didn't care about the consequences anymore. "You want to talk about ruining the mood?" I said, looking directly at Hannah. "Why don't you tell everyone what's really going on between you and Noah? Or should I do it for you?" The backyard went silent. Hannah's face turned pale, and for the first time that night, she didn't have a snarky comeback. I took a deep breath and kept going. "You think nobody notices the way you two act around each other? The sneaky looks, the private conversations? Do you think Jacob doesn't see it?" Jacob's eyes widened, and he looked at Hannah, who was shaking her head furiously. "Don't listen to him," she said, her voice trembling. "He's just trying to cause drama." "Am I?" I shot back. "Because I've got texts and pictures that say otherwise. Do you want to see them, or should we let Jacob decide?" At that point, Jacob stood up, his face a mix of anger and heartbreak. "What texts?" he asked, his voice shaking. I pulled out my phone and showed him the screenshots I'd saved, the messages from Hannah's phone, and the pictures of her and Noah leaving a hotel together. Jacob stared at them in silence, and then he looked at Hannah. "Is this true?" he asked. Hannah didn't answer. She just stood there, her face red with anger and embarrassment. "You're such a liar!" She finally screamed at me. "You've always been jealous of me, and now you're trying to ruin my life." My parents rushed to her defense, accusing me of stirring up trouble and being cruel. "How could you do this to your sister?" my mom asked, glaring at me. "You're tearing this family apart." I couldn't believe it. Even with the evidence right in front of them, they still refused to hold Hannah accountable. I looked at Jacob, who was now gathering his things and preparing to leave. "I'm sorry, man," I said. I thought you deserved to know. He nodded, his face blank, and walked out without another word. The rest of the barbecue was chaos. Hannah was screaming at me. My parents were yelling, and Noah had disappeared at some point during the argument. Rachel grabbed my hand and whispered, "Let's go." As we drove away, I felt a strange mix of relief and dread. I'd finally stood up for myself, but I knew the fallout was only just beginning. After the barbecue, I knew my relationship with my family would never be the same. I had crossed the line, at least in their eyes, by exposing Hannah for what she'd done. But I didn't feel guilty about it. If anything, I felt like I'd done the right thing, even if nobody but Jacob appreciated it. Still, the days following the barbecue were some of the loneliest and most exhausting of my life. It didn't take long for the backlash to start. Hannah wasted no time spinning the story in her favor. She called our parents the next day, crying about how I'd ruined her marriage and lied about her relationship with Noah. She claimed I'd always been jealous of her success and had finally found a way to sabotage her happiness. I wasn't surprised she'd throw me under the bus. It was textbook Hannah. What did shock me was how quickly my parents sided with her. "You need to fix this," my dad said when he called me that afternoon. "You've caused enough damage already. Your sister is heartbroken." Heartbroken, I shot back. "She's been cheating on Jacob for months, and you're blaming me for exposing her? Are you even listening to yourself?" "She made a mistake, but it's not your place to air her dirty laundry in front of everyone," he said, his voice sharp. "What you did was cruel." Cruel? I couldn't believe what I was hearing. She's the one who's been lying, cheating, and making everyone else miserable, but I'm the problem? You're seriously going to keep defending her after everything? "You've always been difficult," my mom chimed in when she took the phone. "Hannah has always tried her best to keep the family together, but you've never appreciated her. And now you've gone too far." There it was. The same narrative I'd heard my entire life. Hannah was the golden child, the glue holding the family together, while I was the rebellious, ungrateful younger sibling. It didn't matter that I had proof of her infidelity, or that Jacob had left because of her actions. To them, I was the villain for standing up to her. The conversation ended with my dad giving me an ultimatum. "Unless you apologize to your sister and admit you were lying, you're not welcome in this house anymore." I hung up without saying another word. Apologize? For what? Telling the truth? There was no way I'd do that. Not after everything that had happened. But hearing those words, being told I wasn't welcome in my own family, still hit me harder than I expected. Rachel was my rock through it all. When I told her what had happened, she hugged me tightly and said, "You don't need them. You have me, and we'll figure this out together." Her support meant everything, but the weight of losing my family still hung over me like a dark cloud. I wasn't sure how to process it. A part of me kept hoping they'd come to their senses, but deep down, I knew better. Within days, the fallout spread to the rest of the family. Aunts, uncles, and cousins who'd heard bits and pieces of the story started reaching out, most of them taking Hannah's side. She'd painted me as a bitter troublemaker who had gone out of my way to destroy her marriage for no reason. Some of them didn't even bother asking for my side of the story. They just assumed I was in the wrong. "Why couldn't you just leave it alone?" one of my uncles asked when he called. "What Hannah does in her marriage is none of your business." "You don't get it," I said, frustrated. "She's been lying to everyone, including Jacob. Why is it okay for her to hurt people, but not okay for me to call her out?" "It's not about what's okay," he replied. "It's about family, and what you did was out of line." Family. That word started to feel meaningless to me. How could they talk about loyalty and unity while ignoring the damage Hannah had caused? It was like everyone was so desperate to maintain the illusion of a perfect family that they were willing to throw me under the bus to keep the peace. With nowhere else to turn, I packed up my things and moved out of the state with Rachel. It wasn't an easy decision, but it felt like the only way to truly start fresh. Staying close to my family would only mean more drama, more accusations, and more pain. Rachel and I found a small apartment in a city a few hours away, and for the first time in years, I felt like I could breathe. Those first few months were tough. I had to find a new job and adjust to life without any support system. Rachel was incredible through it all, helping me stay positive and reminding me that we were building something better for ourselves. Still, there were nights when the weight of it all felt unbearable. I'd lie awake, replaying conversations with my parents in my head, wondering if there was something I could have said or done differently. But as time went on, I started to heal. I found a decent job at a local company, and Rachel and I grew even closer through the challenges we faced together. We got engaged a year later, and for the first time in a long time, I felt genuinely happy. I had Rachel, a steady income, and a sense of independence I'd never had before. It wasn't perfect, but it was enough. As for my family, I didn't hear from them. Not a single call, text, or email. It was like I'd been erased from their lives entirely. I tried not to dwell on it, but there were moments when the silence hurt more than I wanted to admit. I kept telling myself I didn't need them, but part of me still wished they'd reach out, if only to acknowledge the pain they'd caused. 3 years passed, and life continued to move forward. Rachel and I got married in a small ceremony with close friends, and we started saving up for a house. I thought I'd put my family drama behind me for good. Then, one ordinary afternoon, everything changed. I was grabbing lunch at a McDonald's drive-thru when I saw her, Hannah. She was working the window, handing out orders and taking payments. At first, I thought I was imagining things, but then our eyes met. Her face turned pale and she quickly looked away, pretending not to recognize me. I was stunned. Hannah, who had always been the golden child, the one who could do no wrong, was working at a fast food restaurant in a completely different state. As I drove away with my order, questions raced through my mind. What had happened to her? Why was she here? And where were our parents? I couldn't shake the image of her, looking tired and defeated. Despite everything she'd done, part of me felt a pang of sympathy for her. But another part remembered all the pain she'd caused, and I wasn't sure if I wanted to find out the answers to my questions, or if I even cared. Update 1 point. I couldn't get the image of Hannah out of my mind. Seeing her behind that drive-through window was surreal. This was the same sister who, for most of my life, had been untouchable. She was the golden child, the one who always landed on her feet no matter how many times she stumbled. Now she looked beaten, tired, human. For a couple of days, I tried to push the encounter out of my head. Rachel noticed I was distracted and asked what was going on. I told her about seeing Hannah and how it had stirred up old feelings I thought I'd buried. Rachel didn't push me, but she reminded me that I wasn't obligated to do anything. "You don't owe her a thing," she said gently. "Not after what she did to you, and to us." She was right, of course. Hannah had caused me so much pain, not to mention how she had humiliated Rachel during that barbecue years ago. But despite everything, a small part of me felt curious. What had happened to her? Why was she working at a McDonald's in another state? And where were my parents in all of this? Curiosity eventually got the better of me. I decided to go back to the McDonald's and try to talk to her during her break. I wasn't sure what I was hoping to accomplish. Closure, maybe? Answers? Just the satisfaction of seeing her squirm? Wasn't sure, but I felt like I needed to do it. "What do you want?" she asked, her voice flat but defensive. I sat down across from her, keeping my tone calm. "I saw you the other day," I said. "I just wanted to know what happened." She looked away, stabbing at her salad with her fork. "Why do you care?" she muttered. "You've made it pretty clear you're done with me." "I'm curious," I admitted. "Last I heard, you were still living at home. Now you're here, working. This." I gestured vaguely at the McDonald's behind us. "What happened, Hannah?" For a moment, she didn't say anything. Then, as if a dam had broken, the words started pouring out. She told me about how, after Jacob left, things spiraled out of control. Our parents, who had always supported her, eventually reached their breaking point. They couldn't keep funding her lifestyle, especially when she refused to take responsibility for anything. According to Hannah, they threw her out after an argument about money. "I had nowhere to go," she said, her voice trembling. "So I moved in with Noah. He said he had a job lined up here, so we came to this state. But it turned out he was running from debt collectors, and the job never existed. Now I'm stuck here, working this crappy job while he sits at home doing nothing." She paused, wiping at her eyes. "I know I've made mistakes, okay? I know I've screwed up, but I'm really struggling right now. I need a little help to get back on my feet. Can you?" She didn't finish the sentence, but her meaning was clear. I stared at her, trying to process everything. Part of me felt sorry for her. She was clearly in a bad place, and for the first time in her life, she didn't have anyone to bail her out. But another part of me remembered all the pain she'd caused, how she'd lied about me, turned my family against me, and left me to pick up the pieces of my own life. "I'll think about it," I said finally, standing up. "That's all I can promise right now." She nodded, looking both disappointed and relieved. "Thanks," she said quietly. I walked away, my mind racing. I wasn't sure what I'd expected from that conversation, but it left me with more questions than answers. The story she told me didn't completely add up. My parents had always been willing to do anything for her. What could have possibly pushed them to throw her out? Something didn't feel right, and I decided I needed to dig deeper before making any decisions. Over the next few days, I reached out to some old family friends and distant relatives to piece together what had happened after I left. The story I uncovered was far worse than I'd imagined. Apparently, after Jacob left, Hannah stayed with my parents, bringing Noah with her. She insisted they were just friends and needed a place to stay while she got back on her feet. My parents, still believing her version of events, agreed to let them live there. For a while, things seemed fine, at least on the surface. My parents even helped Hannah find a job and paid for therapy sessions she claimed she needed to process the divorce. Later, I found out she never actually attended those sessions. About 8 months after I left, things took a darker turn. Hannah started pressuring my parents to transfer the house to her name. She claimed it was for security and promised to take care of them in return. My parents, eager to support their golden child, eventually gave in despite some initial reservations. But as soon as the house was in her name, Hannah and Noah sold it without warning. They disappeared with the money, leaving my parents homeless and broke. Hearing this made my stomach turn. My parents, who had defended Hannah their entire lives, who had sacrificed so much for her, were now living in a tiny, run-down apartment, barely scraping by on my dad's pension. They had been betrayed in the worst possible way, and Hannah was the one who had done it. I spent the next couple of days trying to process everything. I felt a whirlwind of emotions: anger at Hannah for her selfishness, guilt for not being there for my parents, and confusion about what to do next. Part of me wanted to confront her again, but another part wondered if it was even worth it. What could I possibly say to someone who had burned every bridge they'd ever had? In the end, I decided I needed to hear it from her. I went back to the McDonald's during her break and laid everything out on the table: the house, the money, our parents' current living situation. The look on her face told me everything I needed to know. It was all true. Hannah broke down, alternating between excuses and apologies. She claimed she never meant for things to go that far, that Noah had manipulated her, and that she was now trapped in an abusive relationship with him. For a brief moment, I felt a flicker of sympathy for her, but then she shifted gears, accusing me of being selfish for not helping her, now that she was in trouble. "You've always been jealous of me," she said, her voice rising. "You've been waiting for a chance to see me fail, and now you're enjoying it." I stood up, shaking my head. "You don't get it, do you?" I said. "This isn't about jealousy. This is about you finally facing the consequences of your actions." Before I left, I gave her the contact information for local women's shelters and abuse support groups. "If you're serious about leaving Noah, these places can help," I said. "But I can't. Not after everything." Her final words to me were filled with anger and bitterness, but I didn't care. For the first time, I saw Hannah for who she truly was: a selfish, manipulative person who refused to take responsibility for her actions. And I knew then that I couldn't let her drag me back into her chaos. After my confrontation with Hannah at McDonald's, I drove home feeling an odd mix of emotions. On one hand, I was relieved to have finally gotten the truth out in the open. On the other, it left me feeling drained and angry. How could someone cause so much pain and still twist it around to make herself the victim? I replayed her words in my head, the way she called me selfish, the accusations of jealousy, and I couldn't help but laugh bitterly. It was classic Hannah, refusing to take accountability and lashing out when things didn't go her way. When I got home, Rachel immediately knew something was up. She was sitting on the couch, scrolling through her phone, but she put it down as soon as she saw my face. "How did it go?" she asked. I sat down next to her and let out a deep sigh. "It went about as well as you'd expect," I said. "She admitted to everything, selling the house, leaving our parents homeless, all of it. But of course, she blamed Noah and tried to make herself the victim." Rachel shook her head, her expression a mix of sympathy and frustration. "Did she at least apologize?" "She tried in her own way," I replied. But then she turned around and accused me of being jealous and selfish for not helping her. Rachel scoffed. "Unbelievable. After everything she's done to you, and to your parents, she still thinks you owe her something?" I nodded. "Exactly. I told her I couldn't help her, but I gave her information for shelters and support groups if she wanted to leave Noah. She didn't take it well." Rachel reached over and squeezed my hand. "You did the right thing," she said firmly. "Helping her financially would only enable her behavior. She needs to figure this out on her own." Her words reassured me, but there was still one unresolved issue weighing on my mind: my parents. Now that I knew the truth about what had happened to them, I couldn't ignore it. They were living in a rundown apartment, struggling to make ends meet because of Hannah's betrayal. Part of me felt like I should help them. They were my parents, after all. But another part of me remembered how they had treated me, how they had turned their backs on me when I needed them most. Over the next few days, I wrestled with what to do. Rachel and I talked about it endlessly, and she remained supportive no matter what I decided. You don't owe them anything, she reminded me. But if helping them gives you some peace of mind, I'll support you. Finally, after much deliberation, I decided to reach out. I wasn't sure if I wanted to rebuild a relationship with them, but I felt like I at least needed to hear their side of the story. I wrote them a letter explaining that I had learned about their situation and was willing to talk if they were interested. I included my phone number, but didn't give them my address. I wasn't ready for them to show up at my doorstep unannounced. To my surprise, my dad called me just a couple of days after I sent the letter. His voice sounded older, more fragile than I remembered, and there was a nervous edge to his tone. "Thank you for reaching out," he said. "We'd like to talk if you're willing." We arranged to meet at a small cafe halfway between our homes. When I saw them for the first time in years, I was shocked by how much they had aged. My mom looked frail and tired, and my dad, who had always carried himself with confidence, now seemed stooped and uncertain. It was a stark reminder of how much time had passed and how much had changed. The conversation started awkwardly. There was so much unspoken hurt and resentment between us that it felt like a wall was separating us. But as we talked, the full story of what had happened after I left began to emerge. They admitted they had been wrong to side with Hannah and apologized for the way they had treated me. My dad explained that deep down, they had known I was telling the truth about her affair, but they couldn't bring themselves to accept it. "We wanted to believe the best in her," he said, his voice heavy with regret. "We thought if we just supported her enough, she'd turn things around." My mom, with tears in her eyes, told me how Hannah had manipulated them into signing over the house. "She said it was for our security," she said, her voice trembling. "We believed her, and then she sold it without telling us. By the time we realized what had happened, it was too late. They told me they had tried to press charges, but because they had willingly signed the house over to her, there was little they could do legally. The betrayal had been a harsh wake-up call for them, and they had spent the past few years struggling to rebuild their lives. Hearing their remorse felt bittersweet. On one hand, it was validating to hear them acknowledge the mistakes they had made. On the other, it brought back all the pain of being cast out and abandoned by the people who were supposed to love me unconditionally. "I appreciate your apology," I said finally, my voice steady but guarded. "But rebuilding our relationship will take time. I have my own family now with Rachel, and my priority is protecting our peace and happiness." They nodded, seeming to understand. "We're grateful you even gave us the chance to talk," my dad said. "We know we don't deserve it." Before we parted, I gave them my contact information and told them we could stay in touch. In the weeks that followed, we had a few phone calls, brief and sometimes awkward, but a start. I also arranged for some financial assistance to help them move to a better apartment and cover some of their medical expenses. I made it clear that this help came with no strings attached. I wasn't doing it to buy their affection or to erase the past. I was doing it because it felt like the right thing to do. As for Hannah, I haven't heard from her since our last conversation at McDonald's. A part of me hopes she's found the courage to leave Noah and get help, but I'm not optimistic. She's made her choices, and I've made mine.